Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to talk about something a little different, one of my favorite destinations in all of the world, the Bermuda Circle, or Triangle. Basically, it's kind of the next to the last, no, third from the last, so it's a pentultimate or something like that. And we're going to talk about the Bermuda Triangle. But before we leave this slide, has anybody noticed anything a little dangerous or whatever? How about right there? Now, they got a black hull, so you know that's not us. Anyway, let's go to the Bermuda Triangle. Well, that's it for today. I hope you all enjoyed your trip through the Bermuda Triangle. My voice is really tender, so I have to get it back. Anyway, now let's get back to the 21st century and kind of talk about the waters into which we are sailing. This is not a thing which is to be taken lightly. That's why we had the lifeboat drill this morning. Everybody thinks you do it every 2 weeks, but we had to do it today because we're in the Bermuda Triangle. No, not really. Now we're going to start a little bit with the location, and then we're going to talk about the history and some of the better-known events that happened in the Triangle. Now, the Bermuda Triangle is a region in the North Atlantic Ocean where a number of aircraft and ships have allegedly, and I use the word allegedly quite a bit in this, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. And many people believe that the events are well beyond the boundaries of being, just the average human error, equipment failure, or natural disaster. And that's why the Bermuda Triangle is also known as the Devil's Triangle. Now, where is it? Basically, the first written boundaries were described in a 1964 issue of the pulp magazine, The Argosy. And that article set the boundaries basically as Miami, Florida, San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda. Now, why they didn't pick a city in Bermuda, I don't know. Maybe it's because Bermuda is not a big island. Anyway, subsequent writers didn't necessarily follow that definition, and it seems that every writer gave a different set of boundaries so that the total area covered goes anywhere from 500,000 to 1.5 million square miles. That's kind of variable. Consequently, the determination of which accidents really fell within the Bermuda Triangle is kind of a matter of conjecture. A lot of people just say, well, this is what I want to report. We're going to talk a little bit about some of those as we go along. What we do know is that the area has the most heavily traveled air and marine shipping lanes in the whole world. Commercial ships cross through the Bermuda Triangle daily, sailing between ports in the Americas, Europe, and the Caribbean. Basically, cruise ships are out here all the time. Basically, a lot of them, including us. Anyway, pleasure craft regularly go between Florida and the Bahamas and the other islands in the Caribbean. We're going to talk about a few of the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle and try to determine what was reported or what was written in the news media or other media, and perhaps what really happened. Now, Flight 19, that we'll talk about in a few minutes, may be the most famous case of unusual occurrences in the Bermuda Triangle. It wasn't the first. As far back as Christopher Columbus, we hear that his ship's log mentioned unexpected compass bearings. Now, that was in the yet-to-be-named Bermuda Triangle, but hey, why not? Anyway, whether Columbus thought those bearings were really bizarre or not, but given today's knowledge in maritime science and so on, basically, those kind of things are a little bit unknown. What we do know is Columbus didn't know where he was going, or what was going on anyway. Hey, he just sailed west. So when his compass started to wander around, I don't know how he knew that the compass was wandering around, but basically he was lost for several days in this area. There isn't much news of strange events in the area until really the 19th century. The Marie Celeste, spelled with an I, was a paddle steamer that sank off the coast of Bermuda. It was a Confederate ship, and she was known as one of the swiftest and most fortunate of her type. The Marie carried a cargo of classified merchandise. Basically, that included beef and bacon and ammunition and weapons, much-needed rifles for the Confederate States war effort. And their story goes something like this. They had a local pilot as they were going into Bermuda, and he was steering the vessel. And as he's going along, he announced, quote, "I know every rock here as well as I know my own hand." Right after he said that, they slammed hard into a reef, bow first. The Maurice sank within 8 minutes, but the ship's cook was the only casualty because he disobeyed orders and went below to get some personal items out of his cabin. A similarly named vessel, the Mary Celeste, with a Y, not with an I, was a 282-ton brigantine, and in 1872 she was mysteriously abandoned about 10 miles off the coast of Portugal. Yeah, she became the well-known ghost ship of the Bermuda Triangle. So somebody has kind of stretched that triangle a long way. Anyway, many of the facts concerning the Mary Celeste really came from a short story by Arthur Conan Doyle. You remember him. He's the guy that wrote Sherlock, what's his name? Holmes. Anyway, Doyle's work was a fictionalized account that was based on the Marie Celeste, the sinking in Bermuda of the Confederate ship. But some triangle proponents apparently confused the two Marys. In 1918, USS Cyclops was lost somewhere near the Bermuda Triangle, or perhaps in the Bermuda Triangle. I guess you could stretch it to make it in. Now, it was a Proteus-class collier that was built for the U.S. Navy. The colliers all carried coal, iron ore, or bulk metals. And Cyclops went missing without a trace with her crew of 309. That resulted in the largest single non-combat loss of life in the history of the United States Navy. Now, Cyclops is thought to have been, well, not thought, documented to have been overloaded when she left Brazil on her way back to the USA. Her maximum capacity, according to all of her documents, was 8,100 tons, but her cargo manifest reported her to be carrying 11,000 tons. 2,900 tons, give or take, isn't too bad. Anyway, it consisted of manganese ore that was going to be used to make munitions. Before leaving port, her captain had sent a message stating that the starboard engine had a cracked cylinder, and that report was later confirmed by a Marine Survey Board who recommended that the ship return immediately to port. Along the way, the Cyclops made an unscheduled stop in the Barbados. The water level on the hull was above the plimsoll line. This is the plimsoll line. You can see it on the side of any ship near the midships thing, and it shows where the water line should be for different maximum loads that it can carry in different kinds of water: warm salt water, cold salt water, fresh water, and so on. Now, the next time you get off of this ship or any other ship, when you're near midships, look down near the water line midships, and you'll see our plimsoll line. Anyway, the water line on the Cyclops was above the top line on the plimsoll line, which kind of says, yep, they were overloaded. Many independent theories came up as to why she sank, because it was during World War I. There was some speculation that she was, in fact, sunk by a German submarine. But German authorities, who are notorious for their wonderful records, deny any knowledge of that vessel. Naval historians from both the Navy and the Coast Guard say that she probably went down during an unexpected storm. The Carol Deering was found washed up on a beach near Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, and that was in 1921. She was a 5-masted schooner, and a lot of the Bermuda Triangle theorists claim that North Carolina was within the suspect area, even though it's quite a bit north of the generally accepted boundaries. Basically, rumors reported that the Deering was connected with illegal rum running and smuggling. And this is during the beginning of Prohibition and all that kind of nasty stuff that was going in the United States. And a lot of people believe that she had been a victim of piracy. At about the same time that she was found ashore, a mysterious steamship was seen passing the Cape Hatteras lighthouse. It followed the probable track that they believed that the Deering had been following. The ghost ship ignored all signals from shore, and the SS Hewitt may have been that ghost ship. Nobody knows for sure because they haven't been able to find her, and she might have been a mystery smuggler or a pirate ship as well. because she disappeared at about the same time that the Deering disappeared. The first written article about the mysterious events in the Bermuda Triangle came from the Associated Press. It appeared in newspapers in 1950, even though it was about an incident that occurred 5 years earlier. Flight 19 originated at the U.S. Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. There were 5 Avenger torpedo bombers carrying a total of 5 men. They took off in the afternoon. They were on a routine navigational training mission. Their assignment was to fly a 3-legged route with practice bombing at the Hens and Chicken Shoals. That's a shallow water area in the Bahamas, and it's basically in the Bermuda Triangle. The Navy had been using that shoal area for target practice since the advent of modern naval aviation, so it wasn't a new place for them to go. There was no global positioning system at the time. Pilots flying over water relied on their magnetic compasses and a manual flight computer. Now, they weren't really computers as we know them today. They were kind of like a slide rule, and on it you put your estimated speed, your time, the wind, and you could kind of calculate where you ended up by just sliding things around. Anyway, I won't go into how to run one of those things. But basically it would give you a pretty good position. Now, as the balmy afternoon daylight started to turn into stormy skies with rough seas, Flight 19's planes began to fly together in one direction and in another. All 5 planes are believed to have finally ditched into the sea. Flight 19's pilots were led by a flight instructor named Lieutenant Charles Taylor. At the time, it was standard practice, actually it was standard practice for a long time in the Navy for ships as well, that only the leader of a squadron or a fleet was responsible for the navigation. All the others simply followed the leader. So wherever Lieutenant Taylor went, the rest of them went too. Now, Taylor reported to the air station that he was lost. Transcripts of the in-flight communication suggest that he wasn't wearing a watch, and probably the installed clock in the plane was not working. That makes it tough to navigate. Anyway, both of Taylor's compasses were also apparently malfunctioning. His calculations were at best suspect. A massive land and sea search was mounted, but neither bodies nor wreckage was ever found. Adding to that tragedy, one of the rescue planes, a Martin Mariner PBM-5, also disappeared along with its 13-man crew. A ship in the area reported seeing a large fireball, and then a little bit later on they saw an oil slick where the rescue plane might have gone down. You have to understand, with the Martin Mariner, it was notorious for having fuel leaks coming out of the fuel tanks and the wings into the cabin, so any kind of a spark or anything in that cabin would have instantly detonated that airplane. But in the Navy's final report, the disappearance of Flight 19 was blamed on pilot error. Taylor's family protested, and after several reviews, the Navy's verdict was changed to cause or reasons unknown. Even the movie industry started to get into this with movies all about the Bermuda Triangle, and these are one of the posters that came out from that era. The first standalone article, though, about Flight 19 was published in 1962 in the American Legion magazine, and they wrote that Lieutenant Taylor had been heard saying, "We are entering whitewater. Nothing seems right. We don't know where we are. The water is green. No, it's white. No, it's black." Now, his confusion could be attributed to the fact that they were flying above 10,000 feet and they might have been suffering from lack of oxygen. The article also alleged that officials at the U.S. Navy Board of Inquiry said the planes, quote, "flew off to Mars," unquote. Well, nothing like that has ever been found in any official report by the Navy. They may have believed it, but they didn't write it down. Now we're going to go back to 1964 when the Argosy article appeared. Vincent Gaddis, who wrote that piece, was the first to call the area the deadly Bermuda Triangle. As time passed, he and several other writers started to build on that story with books and articles, and they all kept some of the supernatural elements in them. Pretty soon, people began to wonder if something really was amiss. I mean, in that triangle-shaped little piece of water out there. Gaddis included the incident that involved the SS Marine Sulphur Queen. In his article, he said that the Sulphur Queen, quote, sailed away into the unknown, unquote. Well, let's look at the Marine Sulphur Queen facts. Marine Sulphur Queen was a tanker that had been converted from carrying oil to carrying liquid sulfur. It was last heard from in 1963 with a crew of 39 near the Florida Keys. Again, we had to stretch the triangle a little bit to get there. A significant amount of debris from that ship was discovered and recovered. The loss of the ship was the subject of a very long investigation as well as litigation between the owner and the families of the missing men. The Coast Guard report documented that the ship's maintenance had a very bad maintenance history. She was described as being an unseaworthy vessel whose owner should never let her sail. The final report suggested actually 4 causes of the disaster. All of them were because of poor design, poor maintenance, and poor operation. Within a year of that incident, a pair of U.S. Air Force KC-135 Stratotanker aircrafts collided and crashed in the Triangle area. The Triangle conspirators' version of the story suggests that there were 2 distinct separate crash sites separated by about 160 miles. The area was examined by several search and rescue ships, aircraft, and so on. The unclassified Air Force investigation, which anybody can get from the Air Force, reported that the debris field of the so-called second accident or crash site was just a pile of seaweed and driftwood. Some Bermuda Triangle theorists suggest that the area has paranormal phenomena, attributes that cause these disappearances. Now, proponents of this particular phenomena say that many of the incidents remain unexplained despite considerable investigation and proof to the contrary. Over the years, a whole host of theories, from the truly wacky to the fairly reasonable, have cropped up to explain all of those vanishings. One theory claims that a comet, not the cleanser, the things that come from space, has been causing all the problems since it crashed there about 11,000 years ago. Well, some people claim that, or speculate, that the comet might have still some strange electromagnetic properties that could disrupt compasses and other navigational tools. They claim that it can even interfere with an aircraft engine. Yeah, well, there's no record measurement of any of that kind of stuff that anybody's been able to scientifically prove from anywhere around the area. But way, way, way back, 11,000 years ago, a comet may or may not have crashed into the Earth and plunged deep into the ocean floor right where the Bermuda Triangle is today. It didn't leave any evidence. You know, usually when a comet or a big meteor hits the Earth, it leaves something behind, like evidence of a tidal wave or mass extinctions or fires or something. This thing just splashed, I guess, but there's no evidence of its existence. And we can always blame pirates. You know, I talked about these guys yesterday. That's right, pirates. After all, the Bermuda Triangle is just a little bit north of the Caribbean Sea. In the 15th to the 18th century, the area was infested with them. And actually, we've now figured out that you can watch for Johnny Depp starring in Pirates of the Bermuda Triangle, coming to a theater near you soon. Now, piracy was really a major problem in the Triangle area for hundreds of years. And there are still incidents of piracy that occur around the world, but really not much has been going on here for about 200 years. If pirates ever did start to raid in the area today, they'd have to deal with some of the strongest military and law enforcement forces that have ever existed in history. And piracy won't necessarily, I can't say it never will, but won't necessarily account for aircraft disappearances. But yeah, I have to agree, it might explain some ships that went missing over the years. Other theorists suggest that the area's magnetic fields are askew. We've all heard about compasses that kind of spin in the Bermuda Triangle out of control. And at one time, the Bermuda Triangle was one of the many places on Earth where a magnetic compass just coincidentally pointed toward true north. Typical magnetic compass points to magnetic north. It's not a geographic north. Anyone using a magnetic compass normally has to do some calculations to adjust their magnetic heading to be true north for navigation purposes. Now I'm going to explain a little bit about how that works. Geographically, the north and south poles represent that axis about which the Earth spins or rotates, okay? So that's the stick that goes through the Earth, and that's where your globe is usually attached at home. Anyway, the Earth's iron core creates a magnetic field. It's just like a big magnet that a lot of kids play with when they're working with metal. And that in turn creates the north and south magnetic poles. But that iron core is offset a little bit because of the rotation of the Earth. And so the geographic and the magnetic poles are not aligned. And as that rotation keeps going on, that offset keeps changing. Now the magnetic pole was first determined back in 1831, hundreds of miles from its current location. But the location is not fixed, and it moves, on an average over the long term, about 40 miles a year. Today, the magnetic North Pole is located several hundred miles south of the geographic North Pole in very northern Canada. Other triangle advocates claim that deep beneath the surface of the Bermuda Triangles are pockets of trapped methane, or if you're from England, methane, gas. And that's where gas has seeped from the inside of the Earth, and the pressure and the cold of the depth of the sea freezes it. In very deep water, methane gas is most commonly found as ice balls of methane hydrate. It's often called the ice that burns. The proponents say the gas is just down there waiting to be unlocked by some seismic activity or an underwater landslide. The theory is that if it is unleashed, methane gas could bubble to the surface and reduce the density of the water. Any ship in that patch of water would lose its buoyancy and instantly sink. They say that enough of the gas bubbled up to the surface and got high, way up, thousands of feet into the air. It could potentially stall an aircraft engine or perhaps even be ignited by a spark from the aircraft. Well, there have been a lot of tests that have been done, and in all honesty, those tests seem to support the idea that a ship's buoyancy could be affected by a lot of gas. It is possible that methane hydrates could pose a threat, but not really probable. It would take a massive amount of methane to cause a probable loss of flotation, and nothing ever close to that has ever been observed. It's kind of important to note, though, that the Bermuda Triangle is not the only place in the ocean where methane hydrates exist. Actually, as a matter of fact, it's not even the area with the highest concentration. That's up in the Arctic Ocean, so be careful when you're flying over the Arctic. Now, another group of theorists blame the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle on government testing. Oh, that darn government. They're really out to get us, aren't they? And they're so secretive about it. Now, we all know, we've all been told, we've read, we know Area 51 is real, right? Okay, well, the Air Force evidently just prefers to do all their secret alien stuff out in the desert. But the Bermuda Triangle conspiracy people, they suggest the Navy is doing the same thing underwater in the Bahamas. Boy, I got to tell you, now their idea is that there was an alien spaceship that crashed into the sea near Bermuda. That's not even that close to the Bahamas. It was recovered by the Navy, taken to a secret place in the Bahamas, and of course that's being used to reverse engineer all of its technology. And there are even some who believe that the Navy recovered some aliens from that spaceship. Now, there really is a Navy test facility there. It's in the Bermuda Triangle. It's called AUTEC, and that stands for the Atlantic Undersea Test and Evaluation Center. It's located on Andros Island, which will be just a little bit to the south of us after we sail out of Nassau heading for Miami. It's right on the Bermuda Triangle. And that's in an ocean basin where there are sea depths that are about 6,000 feet. So it's not the deepest place in the whole area, but it's pretty deep. AUTEC is where the Navy tests submarines, underwater weapons, and sonar systems. It's an instrumented laboratory that performs integrated three-dimensional hydrospace and aerospace trajectory measurements. That's a lot. Anyway, its mission is to assist in maintaining the capability of the United States Navy in its undersea warfare program. That's being accomplished through testing, evaluation, and underwater research. The typical task at AUTEC is testing and certifying the proficiency of submarine captains and their crews, as well as the accuracy and the operational capability of their undersea weapons. Now, this sophisticated facility has 3 test ranges: a weapons range, an acoustics range, and a fleet operational readiness accuracy check site. And that's all that's there, but it's secret. Or maybe not. Somewhat related is a belief by the Triangle theorists that there is an alien spaceship, not one that crashed that we got, but it's lurking somewhere where it crash landed deep underwater. They say that the operators of this spaceship are interfering with our primitive technology by using the Bermuda Triangle as a portal for interplanetary, interdimensional travel. There's another so-called Bermuda Triangle that's out in the Pacific Ocean near Japan. And these people believe that the aliens are using that portal to transport back and forth. Hey, that's really cool. The particular myth holds that the human ships and planes occasionally get caught in that alien portal, and they end up trapped between dimensions or lost somewhere in space. The idea is that this is just an unintentional byproduct of your average day-to-day alien time portal transport. Now, my take is, if these guys were so sophisticated and so technologically advanced, why did they crash in the ocean in the first place? Some Bermuda Triangle proponents describe a time vortex. Now, here's their story, or at least one of their stories. In 1970, a pilot named Bruce Gernon and his father were flying in a small plane in the Bahamas. They saw a strange cloud that grew exponentially. It just grew. And it even changed into a tunnel. Gernon said he flew into that rotating cloud because the formation was there. And he also found himself in a thick electronic fog. The cabin of his airplane filled with smoke. There were sparks all around the airplane. Basically, there was a haze all around the plane. His compass spun wildly out of control, and electronic sparks were all over. When he came out of the cloud, Gernon said he was miles from where he expected to be. He claimed to have traveled much, much farther than he could possibly have traveled in the time he'd been flying. He believed that he had passed through a time travel tunnel. Now, I have a few questions. One, what was the source of the smoke that was inside the cabin before he flew into that cloud? You kind of wonder. Anyway, also, why would someone intentionally fly into a spinning, tunnel-shaped cloud? Most pilots that I know, including my wife, would not fly into any clouds that are kind of weird, spinning, great big things. But I guess you could say planes do get into areas where there's a lot of static electricity and lightning, so that could have been confusing. But this particular incident, which got a lot of press, appears to be a one-off. It happened only once, and it seems to be one of a kind. About 45 years ago, a Bermuda Triangle proponent claimed to have found a mirror-covered pyramid while scuba diving under the Atlantic Ocean. He said it was somewhere around the Bahamas. He wasn't quite sure where around the Bahamas, but it was around the Bahamas. That covers a pretty good area. One other problem was that he seems to have forgotten his underwater camera. But this is a computer-generated image of what he said he saw. Now, recently, there were some American and French theorists, conspiracy theorist scientists, if you will, who were conducting some surveys in the Bermuda Triangle, and they claimed to have found an underwater pyramid. Well, okay, so maybe the first guy wasn't so far off. That pyramid reached 300 meters high and was 200 meters on a side, and that's over 900 feet by 600 feet. That makes it larger than the pyramids of ancient Egypt. Now, here's a question. Is that the lost city of Atlantis? Oh, Ever since Homer wrote about Atlantis back in 359 BCE, before the Common Era or before Christ, depending on which one of those abbreviations you want to use, there have been people who have claimed to have found it. So the triangle theorists are not unusual in citing that the Bimini Road, that's a part of Atlantis. Now the Bimini Road is a series of underwater formations in the Bahamas that some have claimed was once a dock in the city of Atlantis. Now geologists, on the other hand, they have looked at this thing and they studied it and they said, nope, it's just a naturally occurring, interesting to look at pile of rocks. Now there are those who believe that Atlantis lies deep beneath the Bermuda Triangle. And they all argue that there are remnants of intense energy crystals that were once used to fuel the city. Well, that's okay. Those crystals would interfere with airplane and ship electronics, and that would cause all that stuff to go haywire. We've already talked about that. But no scientific proof has ever been given to support that the crystals have or ever have existed. Well, if they did exist, they would really solve a lot of mankind's energy problems because, hey, let's face it, you wouldn't have to have oil or nuclear. You just get these crystals and plug them into the wall. So what's the most common cause for ships and aircraft to disappear? Bad weather. Storms are common in the area, and they can spring up without any warning. And there's nothing in any of the records that contradicts this most common cause of plane crashes and shipwrecks in the Bermuda Triangle. It has provided an opportunity, though, the triangle itself, for writers to expound on wild theories over the losses, and that has sold a lot of newspapers, magazines, and books. I have my books on sale but I have to tell you, I'm very skeptical that anything out of the ordinary has ever occurred. Realistically, human error and pilot disorientation probably contribute as much to what happens in the area as anything else. Now, nobody likes to admit that they make a mistake, but we all do it, and pilots and sailors are no exception. The Bermuda Triangle skies are prone to intense, severe storms as warm and cold air masses collide over the ocean, and that puts the triangle smack dab in the middle of Hurricane Alley. The underwater terrain here is very rugged and home to some of the deepest waters in the Atlantic Ocean. Add to that the swift-moving Gulf Stream that cuts right through it, and that makes for some very difficult natural conditions for both ships and planes. Good luck finding anything that goes down here. Between the deep water and the currents, wreckage is long gone. Actually, some people might say it has disappeared into the unknown. From the time of Columbus to the Bermuda Triangle has been at the center of maritime passage, and today it also holds true for aircraft. There's a lot of traffic in the area. When you add to the turbulent weather patterns, swift currents, and landscape composed of a lot of very similar looking islands, it can be pretty easy to get lost out here. If you're in a light plane, this is really hard to find things, not necessarily. Once you're a little way off, it only takes a few more wrong turns until you're really far away from a place where you can refuel, or if you're in a boat where you can wait out some bad weather. Finally, the triangle crosses land, such as parts of Florida, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, and Bermuda itself. There's no evidence of any disappearance of a land-based vehicle or a person. The city of Freeport, which isn't too far from where we're going to be, also this is true for Nassau, but Freeport I use as an example because it's a pretty big place. It's located well inside the triangle. It operates a major shipyard and has an airport. It's visited by 1 million tourists every year, and there are 50,000 flights annually to the island, and they have had no reported unexplained disappearances. The maritime insurer Lloyd's of London was asked if unusually large numbers of ships sank in the Bermuda Triangle. They determined that, in fact, large numbers of ships had not sunk there. The number of disappearances, considering the traffic, is relatively insignificant. Considering the number of ships and aircraft which pass through on a regular basis, Lloyd says no big deal. And Coast Guard records, which I take great pride in, confirm that conclusion. In 2015, probably everybody here remembers this, the Coast Guard searched for survivors from the El Faro. That was a container ship that disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. 96 hours after the cargo ship lost contact with the outside world, the Coast Guard had only found debris from the ship. No survivors, no real heavy-duty information. While the investigation still has not been released, it was reported that the ship's main propulsion system had failed. Now, the ship was heading off into Hurricane Joaquin. That was a storm that was reported with winds of 130 miles an hour. National Transportation Safety Board confirmed that the wreckage found at the bottom of the ocean was the sunken cargo ship El Faro, and that shipwreck is in 15,000 feet of water. As a little bit of an astronaut, they have recovered the ship version of a black box from that ship, so they'll be able to get some more information as they continue with the investigation. There was one CNN meteorologist who said that the forecast changed a lot on the day that El Faro left port. That morning, Joaquin was forecast to be just a tropical storm. Then at 5 p.m., the forecast showed that Joaquin would reach hurricane strength and that the ship's path was going to take it straight into the track of the storm. The Bahamas were put on a hurricane watch that night. Now, as to mysterious causes, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration says, in this case and in most other cases, look to the most mystifying and mysterious of them all: weather. The Coast Guard collects and publishes inquiries and documentation that contradicts many of the incidents that are written about the Triangle conspiracy. First of all, the United States Board of Geographic Names doesn't recognize the Bermuda Triangle. The triangle just doesn't exist according to the U.S. Navy. That's because they have all that secret stuff going on out there probably. It's not outlined on any map that's drawn by the United States or any other readily apparent document of any other major maritime country. One Coast Guard cutter that I served on, not this one's a lot newer than the one I was on, for 2 years transited the Bermuda Triangle numerous times. We were out there a lot. We were involved in several rescues, conducted oceanographic and weather observations, and performed other duties, and we spent many, many days in the area. We never encountered anything that could be otherwise logically explained. Nothing was mysterious other than, an occasional sea monster or an alien. In any event, I hope you buy one of those T-shirts that says, "I survived the Bermuda Triangle," for your favorite brother-in-law back home. So there you have it. Is the Bermuda Triangle a myth or reality? You kind of have to decide. I mean, I'm not going to make the decision for you, but I guess maybe you already did because you booked this cruise, and most of you would have known that the end of this cruise is going to go right through the Bermuda Triangle as we were on our way to Miami. And we're still here. And we haven't yet been attacked by aliens or mysterious forces, so I guess we're pretty lucky. Anyway, as usual, this lecture will continue a repeat on Channel 9 on your television. And let's see, I'm going to just kind of cool it. I'll stay here and answer questions for a little while, and then I'm going to go to lunch. So anybody have any questions? We have a few minutes. Look, I put them all to sleep. Questions, anybody? Wow, thank you very much. Have a great day.